Welcome back, everyone. 皆さん、お帰りなさい。今日は59日目です。It is day 59. Review day. However, I think our first ever set is rolling over now. So we are sitting at about 133. Sounds about right. Our first ever set is rolling back around on top. And no mistakes yesterday. We took our time yesterday, largely because I kind of cut corners. Oops. Ooh, my bad. Did I screw this up? Second. Sometimes when you're moving the window, should really turn off that. Okay. Should turn off that sudden snap. Oh, and I guess my mouse double clicks every once in a while. It maximized the window. Alright, so we're finally rotating around into this, right? We got maybe another month before we see the final rotation from Enlightened to Burned. Yeah, you can kind of see it. Usually this gets down to about half of this, or like 2/3 of this. So there's like 100 per se. Get around 60 or 70 while it's not actively stacked on top of any of these groups. At least that's what I observed. Oh, and as I was saying, the previous day we took it a little bit slower because the previous day, or the day before, had a little corners, was relying on our legacy as opposed to reading and contextually looking at what Ko wrote and other authors. Presumably there were other authors. I was reading on the forum, there are individuals who would suggest that the later stuff might be written by someone else. So surrogately right now, due to the help page or the whatnot, there is no additional name or credit. So I'm assuming maybe, or presuming anyways, that it's likely that perhaps Ko swapped up his approach over time and whatnot. We'll see though. I haven't really noticed this thing. It was a thread, someone said, oh, you know, I'm announcing I'm leaving and these are the reasons, right? At a much later stage. Alright, let's head into the review. Our reviews for the day. I don't expect to see any lessons today. Maybe 1 or 2 vocab. No, I don't think we're unlocking anything. So. Okay.
Kusachi.
Kusachi.
Kado.
Kado.
Anzen.
Anzen.
Ryohou.
Yoho. Inside the company, within the company. Okay. E2 what? That's weird one. Is this a G2 as well? The weird one about this is G2 what for the oh, 2 boats, right? G2 boats to row.
両日
That's right. That's right. Excuse me. I feel like this one had Rendaku. Igusa. Does it have a Rendaku? Igusa. Shikusa? No, Shikusa sounds really sharp. Right? It's kind of a 50-50. Gesture, doing. Remember any mnemonics? Oh wait, but there aren't any mnemonics for Rendaku. So I don't know. I don't know. I should start writing notes. Yeah, I should start writing notes for Rendaku. Shikusa.
Shigusa.
I don't think there's a Rendaku note, right? No Rendaku note. It just sounds really sharp. That's the only thing that gives it away.
Karada.
Okay. What? The heck? Yeah, no, yeah. emoji. Ichimoji? Ichimonji. Right, Ichimonji is straight line. We have more emojis than monjis. Ichimonji.
Ichimonji.
Shanai.
Shanai.
Tengoku.
Tengoku.
Gaikoku.
Gaikoku. Neck is Ubi. Nusha.
Nyusha.
Oops. My ski. Yesterday's. Or. Oh, it was yesterday's error, wasn't it?
Maitsuki.
Maitsuki. Or 2 days ago. No. Zenkoku? Oh, nationwide. Zenkoku. Koku.
Zenkoku.
Kyoku.
Hoko.
Hoko. Okay.
Sankaku.
Sankaku.
Hayashi.
Hayashi.
Beikoku.
Beikoku.
Higashi.
Higashi.
水星
Suisei. Doing good on this level? Yeah. Doing fine. Still fine. How are you, Gecko?
週
Ew. I did end up watching Look Back. It was really wonderful. Had a bit of a Clannad thing going on. Just the end of Clannad after story though. Nothing like entertaining the what ifs and the existentials and the butterfly effects when it comes to dealing with grief. And then clever way of dealing with taking things for granted or losing things and appreciating things when they're gone kind of situation. And all baked into the aspirations and the topical instances regarding a westernized appeal for anxiety, social anxiety, and the contrasting characters, right? Although I do have to admit both those characters are quite they are a caricature of the being a movie. Obviously it's very appropriate that those two characters were dramatic caricatures of a larger whole in order to produce that contrast. It was very intimate. I liked how intimate it is. You haven't seen Clannad yet, but you bet you would like it. Yeah, specifically I'm talking about Clannad After Story, which you don't necessarily have to watch Clannad, the Clannad 2004 or something like Clannad 2000. There were two Clannads. One was the Clannad by its namesake, and then there's Clannad After Story. The After Story is built around family orientation, and then the first one was a harem. It was a harem, but the female characters are caricatures of different perceptions that female characters can encounter. So harems usually in a structure where you have a variety of characters, right? And those characters become caricatures of a whole. When Clannad After Story, since they focus on a very singular, particular set of characters, all those characters are far more like dynamic. They're not caricatures of one. The movie Look Back did a nice, modest job of being intimate enough and then not being too dynamic that it becomes unwieldy. Right. Sometimes that is an art form in itself, where you have only so much time to embellish a character and to not lose the point of the movie while embellishing enough to communicate the point of the movie, right? Oftentimes you have movies that when they embellish too much, they set up too much of the character. Most of it is left unexplored and then leaves the viewer with a more mixed or lack of clarity, while and maybe potentially unfocused. I kind of like those movies actually, though, who are unapologetically setting up things and demonstrating that when you finish watching the movie, it's a natural perception that you won't be able to have closure on everything. In this movie, though, it goes to show that while they had somewhat of an open-ended thing in look back, it was very much tied up very well, largely because the movie focused very intimately on very specific characterization of the characters, and both characters were one-dimensional enough that it feels like there's clarity while also being hopeful near the end. A substantial number of the movies that I watch, when you end, you're left with more questions than when you start it. You are encouraged to brainstorm and think about all the possible things that could happen next, right? And Look Back did a little cheeky thing where, like, you get two separate lines moving forward. It's like, use your imagination. But it wasn't so much that the content in the story did not have closure. So I really appreciated how tightly it was, very tightly crafted. And it's a very calculated movie about this subject matter, for sure. One that embodies the victim of socialization, right? The neat, recluse, isolated, social anxious, and then the somewhat proactive, had a lot of early sources of affirmation, but then was met with a realization of humility and hubris, right? So you get those two, although it is from one perspective and not from both perspectives, right? I think in terms of animation, lots of the other perspective, it has been represented. So I think Look Back was refreshing on the prospect that they took the position of the proactive character as opposed to the self-defeated recluse character, which is far more represented in the industry right now, because that stuff is how a substantial body of youth, especially the internet generation, feel typically, right? I think a good example of this would be Koichi the Rock show. For you, movies like this have a soul of their own. I didn't find it perfect by any means, but it's definitely memorable. Even with the use of caricatures, it felt very human to you. Yeah, I mean, caricatures are still parts of humans. I think for me, it was a very calculated move. It was a very calculated, and that's pretty much what makes it a very human piece. I think it's soulless often when the piece is observational with no intent. So, like, for example, you go out and you record some anecdotes and then you retell those anecdotes. That's soulless to me. This is a finely crafted and very intentionally laid out thing. Calculated things are filled with souls when it comes to creative animation and story writing. If they feel like it's haphazard and free-flowing with no sense of direction, then it can appear soulless, as in, hey, I'm here to disseminate an information, take it for what it's will, I like being guided through an intent, and the movie definitely swims of that. I don't like using the word perfect, so that's something that we both that's something you and I differ very vastly, using like idealism to rationalize one's own perceptions, right? Like original. There's no argument for whether it's perfect by any means or anything. There isn't anything that is perfect to me. So in absolute to counter an absolute is probably usually what I say. So cliche terminating, right? I agree with you. Is it memorable? I think so. I think it's memorable to me as well. Although I cannot guarantee that I would forget it over time, largely due to the nature that I guess you and I might differ in the volume of these type of pieces that we consume. Yeah, definitely. You've watched season 1 of Bocchi. You liked it alright, but it didn't feel very innovative artistically, for the lack of a better term, when compared to something like Look Back. The artistic direction is definitely a standout. However, that's also fundamental in the design choice. Movies and anime are apples and orange comparisons when it comes to innovation in artistic direction. The animation was fantastic. It's a very subtle, it's a very noticeable difference in artistic perception. And there was a lot of rigging and directional stuff, so there's a combination of things. But if you had a Bocchi movie, you would say otherwise as well. Usually technology and animation stuff dramatically change depending on the medium of the production. So I feel that is a double standard when it's when you're making comparison like that. Maybe a much more adequate comparison would be something like Shinkai. Shinkai, where is it? Shinkai. Is it Shinkai? Just realized my pronunciation. Yeah, Shinkai. So Makoto Shinkai. Shinkai would be a much more adequate comparison when it comes to artistic direction. You might forget Look Back to an extent as well with time, but I feel anytime I get reminded of it, I would look back on it fondly. See what you did there? Yeah. That is what I mean by I might forget it. So forgetting means the meaning and the sentimental is attached to everything moving forward. So everything that you get more that reinforces the prior adulterates its impact as being memorable. So what I mean by that is the next movie I watch that reminds me of Look Back is sharing space with Look Back. So less and less of Look Back will be there. However, it's memorable, it's significantly, sentimentally important to me, whether it's memorable or not. As in, you get reminded of these things, but the details in it will share space with other things. It's kind of like forming associations, right? Like this word. At some point, the separate pieces will share its other meanings with other things. So sharing space ultimately makes it less memorable overall, in my opinion. Like, because all of it is part of the bigger picture. So when I say Look Back is going to be less memorable to me, is because I watch a lot of I am exposed to a larger volume of things related to that. I would say when you say it's definitely memorable, I can empathize with that at the moment due to recency. However, I probably would say I watch far more. It's probably conservatively to say I watch far more of this type of content than you do, perhaps. Largely due to the nature of probably pragmatic things like time and interest, right? I think you and I have a substantial enough contextual interest difference. I would suggest this type of stuff might not be something you watch very, very often. I do though. I do. And it's a great piece due to recency. I'm trying to think if there's one that deliberately dealt with this subject matter off the top of my head. I think Clannad is the closest thing that I immediately gravitate towards. And Clannad is a television show, so artistically it's that too. You really like Makoto Shinkai's movies, of course. The more recent ones are overall pretty popular. Among his older ones, you like 5 centimeters per second? I do too. And The Garden of Words. Yeah, those were the two that I would highlight. Although I really have to throw a nod back to Voice of a Distant Star. I mean, that predated Christopher Nolan's Interstellar. That was I know that sounds like a wild leap of association, but Voice of a Distant Star, the core concept of Voice from a Distant Star is very, very at the core of Interstellar's novelty. And that's one of his, pretty sure, right? Yeah, that's one of his earliest works. I don't know if you've seen Voice of a Distant Star. Alright, let's get National Treasure. Koku. Uho.
国宝
You don't think you've seen that one? You have to look into it now. Yeah, it's Shinkai, all right. So if you like 5 centimeters per second already in Garden Words, you probably know what you're looking for, like what you're going to get yourself into. Shinkai is the ever consistent, have the ever consistent motif, but the context keeps changing, right? You gotta love his consistency to core human condition stuff, while constantly switching up the context in which one can stretch that theme. Also, I used Shinkai as an example because Shinkai is probably arguably one of the most mainstream at the moment in terms of artistic direction, right? It's one of those things, you look at it as a whole, right? You step back, you look at a movie, and you suddenly like, that's a Shinkai movie. It's almost there's like a very, very noticeable watermark on Shinkai. What other has there been? I haven't watched anime movies in a while, so that look back was very refreshing. It's very tight. The writing is incredibly tight instead of loose. As I've mentioned multiple times, I've been watching One Piece. I'm at like episode 157 or something like that of One Piece. Trying to get into the groove.
Kusha.
Kusha. Oh, not Kusha. Kusha. Wait.
Dose.
Dose. Movies. Movies. I still haven't watched The Boy and the Heron yet, actually. Miyazaki's I don't want to say final, but Miyazaki's recent film. It is, for all intents and purposes, his final film. I haven't seen it yet. It's the one film. One final film. Maybe I should watch that this evening if I have time. The last couple days I haven't had any time. Obviously, I end like moments before I eat and sleep. Largely because of Pirate Yakuza. Hyundai. No. Yes. Hyundai. I don't have any other read other than Hon. Oh wait, I do have other reads. Do I have other reads?
本来
That's originally Hyundai. Primarily, essentially, because it's mainly origin, mainly come from in origin. Believe it or not, you have not seen any Ghibli movie yet. You know you really should. Yeah, I've seen. I don't think there's. I even watched Lupin the Third's one. Miyazaki actually made one Lupin the Third or Lupin the Third movie. It was like Castle something. But yeah, from time to time I actually watch Miyazaki films again. There's also Hoshira. Have you seen Hoshira films? I think if there are any incredibly consistent, I mean, obviously the Chainsaw Man guy or Look Back guy might be a new kid on the block in terms of movie production, but Hoshira right now, Hoshira and Shinkai are probably the guys. The past guard was more like the late Satoshi Kon and Miyazaki, but Hoshida is still around. Hoshida is a fairly younger person. He did I guess his breakout hit would be The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, The Boy and the Boy and the Bear. I keep forgetting the name of the one, and Wolf Children, and I'm missing one. He's not as proliferative. However, his movies are consistently excellent. And he deals with naturism. Like mysticism, naturism, a lot more closer to Miyazaki. But not necessarily like movement oriented kind of thing. But deals a little bit with like mysticism and nature to communicate like coming of age and family value stuff. And Hoshira is far more family oriented. It deals less with necessarily romance. It deals with overcoming adversity and caring about one another. That's his standard like affair, and he spins it with mysticism, different forms of mysticism. You might even say the most recent one had elements of Journey to the West. Oh, The Boy and the Beast. Sorry, not bear. Beast. The guy looks like a bear, but it's The Boy and the Beast. Yeah. Mamoru. Mamoru Hosuro. Hosoro. Sorry, not sh. Hosoro. Hosoda. Hosoro. Hosoda. Hosoda. I keep getting his name incorrect. My bad. Yeah. Hosoda. Hosoda. Did he have a recent one? Oh, he did. Oh yeah, Summer Wars. Summer Wars. Summer Wars was the other one. I didn't see Mirai yet, and apparently he made a movie called Belle in 2021, so I haven't seen that either. Yeah, I really liked his first movie, or the movie of his own original. He started with Digimon, but The Girl Who Leapt Through Time was amazing. Summer Wars was probably his mainstream breakout. Yeah. Also, you see most of his films. Wolf Children was your favorite? I think it resonated with it as a parent. Yeah, I really enjoyed Wolf Children quite a lot. The Boy and the Beast resonated really well because it sparked a Journey to the West memory. That's kind of the go-getting spirit that an adolescent should have. I think you saw Belle, not your favorite though. I see now there's a new coming out. Yeah, Scarlet. That's right. Yeah, I have not seen Belle. I also leaped over Mirai, so I'll have to. Mirai struck me as like a Ponyo situation. A Ponyo. Ponya? Which one is it? Ponyo situation, which takes a step back, look at more early adolescent stuff. But I don't know yet. I haven't seen it. Ponyo is a Miyazaki film. It was a Little Mermaid film. I think one very, very down-to-earth Miyazaki film would be like, what is it called? On the Hill or something? Hold on. That was very quaint. Underrated, perhaps. Something on the... Oh no, maybe it wasn't... it might be his son. No. Is it? Oh, no. It's not Miyazaki. It might be someone from Ghibli, though. I can't think of it right now. It's something... Yeah, I can't think. It has My Country Road in the... It has a Japanese version of Country Roads, and I really like that song. So that was one of the highlights that is memorable about the movie. They used Country Roads. It had a very rustic feel to it. Just kids discovering themselves, coming of age. Miyazaki classic. Pretty much all of his characters are female characters that are having a coming of age moment. Didn't like Mirai as much either compared to his early works. We'll see what Scarlet is like. I see. Yeah. Yeah, other than that, I don't really think of a very proliferative animation director. Japanese animation director. Yeah, animation, while it's great, you know how animation works, and when you hear the successes and whatnot, but I actually think, I'm not sure, I don't work in animation, however, I think there's an incredible diminished return to be an animator in modern age, like this current era of entertainment. I think animated movies in general have incredible diminished return, and that is also including nowadays DreamWorks Productions, Pixar Productions, claymation, like forms of animation has become very diminished in return. And I don't necessarily think it's intentional, bad or good kind of thing, or no one's like maliciously boycotting these type of things. It's largely due to societal, in my opinion, an overall societal objectivity, right? Right now, we talk about internet a lot and how it affects and normalize our behavior and all that unintentionally, right? And because of that type of thing, forms of creative expression, suspension of disbelief, a lot of creative subjectivity, nuances, sentimentalism, existential stuff are kept to a minimum. Usually it's about observable facts, realism, hyperrealism, resonating points that are representative of the audience that is more likely to represent a larger group, and the larger group predicates on logical, objective, hyper-realistic takes on things. So when things hurt, right? When things hurt, portrayals of things, of feelings, and looking at the good in the bad and the bad in the good, and that type of lack of clarity is not very conducive to animation work. Do you think you're watching too much new stuff at the moment currently airing? It's fun too, but I think next anime season you like to go back to catching up on some older shows and movies. Yeah, I go through cycles as well. I totally feel you on that one. Right now, you know, One Piece is where I'm going with that. I'd like to think I'll catch up to episode 1167 or something by the time Netflix's what was it? Was it Mappa or Wit Studio, I think, is who they got for the reimaging of One Piece, and maybe even season 2 of the One Piece live action. No one had there isn't a person who made a strong case for me to revisit Bleach yet, although Bleach has been brought up a couple times. Let's see, both hands, huh? Ryote.
両手
Ryote. I hope this is book. Okay. You gave up on starting One Piece, you'll stick to the remake and the live action? Yeah, I started One Piece like on 2 separate occasions. So I actually saw the first like a pre-Grand Line. I saw the pre-Grand Line arcs, like the expository, the origin arcs, pre-Grand Line like twice already. So now I'm post-Grand Line, which is interesting enough. We've got past the post-Grand Line now, or we got into the Grand Line. So now I'm in the Grand Line arc of stuff. It's all right. It's a workhorse. I like legacy building. I go back and forth. So at one point I'll pick up a legacy build, and One Piece is a legacy thing, right? I think Attack on Titan finally doing that, and the legacy ending it's pretty got me in the mood to up my volume. Miyazaki is definitely a legacy thing. If there was anything I could do about Miyazaki, I would love to write like a thoughtful essay or something, like filmography essay on Miyazaki's legacy. That said, Miyazaki's still alive today, so I'll let him do the talking. Right. There was a time that I could have seen Miyazaki in person and shook his hand or like get something autographed, but that was not in the cards, pragmatically speaking. As well as Uematsu. Uematsu, there was a chance, there was a time too for that. The Final Fantasy composer. Okay. Dario.
車両
Dario.
不明
네.
全日本
全日本.
Anshin
안신. I've yet to write. I have yet to watch Flow yet. Largely, again, this week has been Pirate Yakuza all day long. It would be, one great realization when you have investment and sentimentalism into something is that while you're playing a game, you're already hoping that Sega would drop a trailer for the next game. Like, I'm at the end of the day, right? Since I'm recording most of this, when the recording ends, I have to try not to be tempted, right? Not tempted to continue playing and whatnot. But you've become sentimentally attached to something when you start thinking and start planning for the next one while the current one is still happening, right? I would love that people have something like this in their life, at least one thing here and there. But man, it's coming to an end soon, temporarily, anyways. Mei Kyoku?
名曲
名曲 安心 Oops.
来月
来月 You love this bittersweet feeling when you're reading, watching, playing something that you love, and you can feel the end coming as well as the feeling right after you're done. Yeah. Yeah. It's there was oh, you asked the other day about standout of Pirate Yakuza when compared to the previous one. So they really upped their ante when it came to the special so there's this thing that you expect dealing with romancing, but this romancing thing is often a vignette. They tend to vignette romances, so it's like not canonical intimate love, like long-term love, but at the same time it celebrates short-term relationships and the hopefulness of long-term relationships. So that's a staple in the game, and as a core mechanic they have to spin the dating aspect as a completion product. So every game has their own spin on it, and Pirate Yakuza had a standout performance, largely because nearly the entire segment was done in live action. And with the person that they had, who I believe is a comedian, who happens to be a comedian of sorts. So they did the scenes with 5 female actresses and their likeness. The thing about Pirate, the Like a Dragon series is oftentimes anyone who has a spoken character model that is like really ingrained into the game showcase, they tend to be modeled after the voice actors. So it also, that means it can present an opportunity in which they do special ending completion things that involve the live action versions, and they're borderline a mixed feeling. So when we're talking about like the bittersweet feeling of reading, watching, and watching an end, how does this relate? I really enjoy experiences where it doesn't make you feel specifically one feeling. It's kind of like, oof, that is cringy as heck, and it's like, oh, that's kind of lovely. Ooh, this is awkward. Oh, that's kind of sad. Oh, that's lovely. That kind of thing. And at the end of that, that's one of the Pirate Yakuza. They did not. They unapologetically went for it, and it was a bag of mixed feelings. And what's a bag of mixed feelings? Incredibly memorable. Something that lacks soul is something that doesn't move you, you know? But in this case, boy howdy, it certainly moved me in certain ways that were very, very weird. There was one, let's just say there was skin being shown, and is not the type of skin that you, they subverted skin as well. They did some like body humor, and that is very brave, and I quite liked it. I think that was 2 days ago now. Yeah, the day before. Had a wholesome message as well. Yeah. Here's the thing, right? I don't think Like a Dragon has ever not taken a risk. Like, they take a lot of creative risks. Now the thing is, the creative risk is a double standard for most people now, like especially people who consume video games. It's only bad when it's bad, but it's not good when it's good. Now hear me out, I will simplify this a little bit for the sake of brevity. Oftentimes the creative risk in like presenting a message or doing humor and stuff is, oh, that's nice, but it's extra to a video game when it's nice. When it's bad, it destroys everything that is good mechanically, if you know what I mean. So when a video game takes a risk and the story or the creativity or the scene or the writing or the characters are bad, then it ruins the game. It's a double standard when it's good, because then it's an afterthought for most people who play video games. Not to say that you are one of them, Gecko. I'm certainly not one of them. I actually put it front and center as opposed to the other way around, because the other parts that make Like a Dragon consistent, and people still think it's consistent, and that Like a Dragon RGG studios do not take creative risks. They consistently take creative risk, constantly. But it doesn't seem like they take creative risks because the large part of their game is iterative design. Even in that mechanical iterative design, they're constantly taking creative risks for like the mechanical side. But a large substantial of the bottom line in Like a Dragon games are mechanically consistent. So that mechanical consistency overshadow any good creative risk when it comes to writing and story building and like world building. They're good, so they're an afterthought because it's good, but it gets overshadowed by consistent game mechanics. When the story is bad, then it overshadows whatever is already consistent. And those, what I said here, summarizes most, if not like more than 70% of reviews on Like a Dragon games. When the story is bad, it gets a bad score because it doesn't matter as much whether it's mechanically sound, there are no bugs, no performance issues, the game works like a charm, and it has lots and lots of volume and lots of things to do, and it keeps you busy for like 40 to 50 hours, and you enjoyed every hour of it. The story sucks. Game's ruined. Right? And then when the game when they hit on all cylinders with their story, where's my content? Where's my mechanics? I wish this game had more mini games and like more in-depth combat system and whatnot, because it gets overshadowed by it being a video game. So I think, to me, that's kind of one of those things that I tend to find myself thinking, am I really overweighing something? And I'm doing it intentionally, obviously. I'm biased. I'm biased in the opposite sense. I think games that are often taking lots and lots of creative risks are underappreciated when they're good, and when it's not good, they're overappreciated, as in they overrepresent what actually works. You really like it in any large budget franchise when some parts really highlight the creative people behind it? I agree. Of course, most of these things are business first and foremost, but it's sad when it's just that. Yeah. It becomes a little soulless, right? When a business has to take front. And this is not only on the side of a business, it's on the side of their consumer too. This is a two-body problem, or more like a two-organization problem, right? To group of populations. When you have a business model that emphasizes a specific bottom line, and that bottom line limits the creative freedom the developers have, largely due to the business needing to cater to the target audience, then if the pandering is required strongly enough, then the liberties of creativity in the developers go down, right? Like, for example, what is Witcher 4 going to look like? Well, due to the creative target audience, it's going to have a lot of restrictions, and even self-imposed. Like, CDPR technically is still in-house, right? CDPR is still in-house, but even then, when they were working on Cyberpunk 2077, the vision was lost due to pandering. The constant ebb and flow of pandering is causes a lot of dissonance, right? And there are pros, and here's a pro to the business side of things. A business can limit developers' aspirations, because sometimes developer aspirations get out of control, right? It's to the point where, yes, you want the world, you want to make the world and stuff, but then is it plausible or feasible or practical to a target audience? Knock them back down to earth. So, however, right now in this day and age, I think it's more the former than the latter, where the demands of a target audience, hyper algorithmically supported expectations, are heavily skewed, and businesses are responsible for that, not the creative sense, because creative sense do not necessarily cater to target audience, and that's one and the same. Like for me, if you gave me a key, right? Like for example, if someone approached me, it's like, I had this great idea for a video game. Here's the key. And then my first question would be like, is there anything you want me to focus on or see in your game? And they're like, no. It's all on you. Like, I want you to decide for yourself. It's like, no, but I'm really interested in your creative like intent, right? That to me is a vast minority. Absolute vast minority. I think a common response nowadays, especially someone who's consuming products, like, oh, what's the quality of video game? Does it meet my standards of like hyperrealism? It's like, oh, I see. Does your game have really, really interesting story that will vibe with me and a mechanic that feels like this and this? And the other person would be like, I just want you to try out my game, dude. Like, and give me the benefit of the doubt. And that's not how that works. So instead, a developer would approach the person, explicitly explain everything that the game has, and they would target someone who would be interested in the things that they're focused on. So then that creates a selective bias and a feedback bias where it reflects upon the people who are looking at that stuff. So now you get into the thing like, oh yeah, oh, this person's sponsored by this video game. There's no way they couldn't have liked this video game or disliked this video game because it's targeted. So that's the normalization of everything nowadays, right? You are intentionally and explicitly engaging in things in which you already are expected to support. So what's the few times that this happened for me? A Like a Dragon game, and I disclose that all the time. If you put a Like a Dragon game in front of me, I'm going to like it. I'm a legacy player, right? And this is the closest thing that I have right now. Like a Dragon is the closest thing I have in order to resonate with the vast majority of consumers, in my opinion, in this day and age when it comes to video games. They buy video games, they play video games based on explicit advertisement and expectations to be met, and business side of things are responsible for that. The developer side of things are not, and the business side impart those targeted demands and expectations to be met by the developer, and then with that met, they hope that they have enough funding to have enough creative freedom, right? The creative freedom to do so. And that often is bottom of the rung, right? After all meeting all the expectations of the target audience, in which is mediated through the business branch, then finally, with whatever money left over, right? With whatever money left over, the developers are given the leeway, like, oh, okay, you can be creative. We have some budget left. And usually it doesn't ever get there. Largely, in my opinion, is due to the pandering of the target consumer. What are the expectations of the target consumer? The world, everything. So on the business side, like, dude, what you're asking for requires like all of the budget. Okay. Throw it to the developers like, hey guys, we have no money to squeeze for creative liberties or freedoms or risks, okay? Because apparently our target audience wants the world in everything. So can you guys keep making the world and everything, and we'll give you all the money we have, which is definitely not enough to meet the crazy, insane, and ridiculous expectations of our target audience, but make it happen anyways, okay? And then when the game is released and bad things happen, you guys also take the blame for it. Sorry, but that's just how it works these days. And that's how I kind of hyperbolically illustrate the miscommunication here. I don't necessarily think it's just the businesses, and I don't think anyone's intentionally doing this, right? I think it's mediated by the internet and how content creation works a lot of times. Expectations are constructs of humanity, right? So when you're buying a product, if you expect the world, how do you expect creative freedom to fit in that equation, and creative risk to fit in an equation that your paying customers are the ones who don't want to be creative with their desires? Isn't that paradox? In my opinion, when I ask someone, hey, what do you think the next Resident Evil game is going to be like? Their emphasis is going to be from a sentimental point of view, not a creative point of view. Like, and what I mean by that is a vast majority of people will name and predicate it based on what they have experience with, not where they should go in the future or how it should be changed up. That is in the minority, right? They don't have time to think about that. They rarely think about that. They prefer to be pandered to. At least the algorithm does that well. So when the algorithm does that well, then you kind of expect other humans to also do that. Not that I'm blaming anyone. This is more of a system-wide thing, right? It's normalizing behavior that we otherwise may or may not have intended or unaware of. Maybe even aware of, but human condition. Agreed, businesses aim to produce what their consumers want after all. Yeah. Talking about The Witcher, what they did with the TV show is so disappointing in your opinion. Sometimes I wonder how they managed to think something with such potential, creatively bad and bad business. I read a lot about it, like in the whatever is available, I suppose. Miscommunication happens, right? We can, if I had like a thing that would be close to that, I guess I would think about like Cowboy Bebop, Netflix's Cowboy Bebop. You might be saying, a lot of people said that was creatively bad and possibly even bad business, but that was like, it screamed creative risk all over the place. So what is bad, was construed as bad, is a creative risk and a business risk. So they took a creative risk for The Witcher and they came out with conflicts of interest. So, yeah, that's a deep barrel for The Witcher. Also, we'll see how CDPR comes out of that. Because CDPR has to follow whatever is tangentially associated with that. I mean, the way you talked about creatively bad and bad business sounds like a sting coming from someone who was upset with Game of Thrones. Since you already shared that. So I wouldn't put it past the sting and stuff. I didn't think it was bad business. I think it was very appropriate business. As a contrast, largely because it was a Netflix show. And then creatively bad, I'm gonna say they were creatively different and they had a conflict of interest, unfortunately. And due to that conflict of interest, it had a dissonance in the production itself. So like, Henry Cavill was quite vocal about their conflict of interest when it comes to that. It would, one would argue, if there wasn't a conflict of interest, even despite the creative direction, it might not have end up being creatively bad. I think the dissonance in people's conflict of interest was what makes it seem bad. Much like releasing a game without considering your target audience's expectations. Wholeheartedly considering your target, which is what business do, right? One of the default functions of the business mediator is to keep that within scope. You could argue it's creatively good if they take creative risks without considering or pandering to target audiences. And it would be considered creatively good if it worked. It would be considered creatively bad if it doesn't. I think sometimes saying bad business and good business is reasonable. Saying creatively bad or creatively good, I have more reservations with saying creativity is particularly bad or good. Largely because their business is business. Creativity is creativity, I suppose. That's kind of a cliche terminating statement. But I did not think it was, at least I've seen most of it. I don't know if I've seen the last season before the exit of Henry Cavill, but yeah, hopefully I look forward to Witcher what becomes a Witcher 4, considering all that media exposure. Old coming from old? Huh. Coming from old. Of course, the Witcher TV show is not over, so we'll see. I'll still give it the benefit of the doubt until it's over. But no benefit of the doubt when it comes to Game of Thrones, huh? I did see all of Game of Thrones. I watched the last season. Yeah. A wait and see response. No further commentary on the wait and see response. Coming from old. So like since old times? I need to refocus. Well, Game of Thrones is over and the end sucked. No benefit of the doubt there. Did you see the end? You didn't give me the impression you did. So from ancient times, right? Coming from the old. I was a bit off. I guess it's like from ancient times as opposed to the ancient times.
空
Hold up.
来る
Did it? Oh, today, I think recently in Pirate Yakuza, I just realized that one of the characters in Pirate Yakuza and also Yakuza 4, his name was Minami. And I just now realized it could mean south. You saw all of it? I see.
南
Did you ever hear the story? This is a slightly going back to it, what you mentioned about The Witcher. Did you do you know of the story behind the author and their relationship with CDPR? I thought that was pretty humorous. Although I think they're now reconciled and on board for Witcher 4, so that's the journey does not end. It did not end there. So what about Game of Thrones? No, Game of Thrones was as you expect when it came to the business relationship. But the relationship between like the Polish author of The Witcher and CDPR was definitely a interesting story. I'm curious if they'll do a documentary on it at some point. I would love to see more like fleshed out the relationships between the writers, the different writers and different creators when it came to the existence of the Witcher franchise. Kuni.
国
Ushiro.
後ろ
知る
Iru. You don't know the details, but you read some about it, yes. Now I wonder how the author feels about Netflix. I think hold up. As far as I know, Netflix did not consult him on most of anything. Right. However, CDPR, I'm not sure if CDPR was consulted. I think so. So there is that. And again, I don't particularly agree with I don't wholeheartedly agree with your creatively bad and bad business. I think it was creatively different. And since it didn't meet target audience's expectations, it was considered bad business. There's a level of double standard there that I'm reflecting upon. But yes, I don't think the author. In fact, I don't think the author was consulted on most things because the author sold rights, usage rights to CDPR. The historical thing, allegedly. I'm gonna say allegedly because there aren't like formal documentations of this, but allegedly, to me, is still alleged since I can't confirm these things. That the author themselves didn't necessarily, through the action, my interpretation of their action, they do not hope big things about the books they had. And to me, I actually think that is more of a self-reflection statement than anything else. I think there was an interview of sorts or some quotations of sorts when the author genuinely and candidly said they didn't think what they wrote, imposter syndrome and whatnot. It's so understandable because if there's any way I'm sure CDPR wasn't the one that says, oh, your work is crap, therefore we want to pay money to do a game on it, right? So they had more confidence in themselves and in his writing than the author themselves. So the author was far more convinced of themselves, like, oh yeah, just do whatever you want with it. That to me is a more of a hubris moment as opposed to anything else. So I hope that their reconciled relationships bring something magical to the Witcher series, because I do really enjoy the Witcher series. I hope he at least got some good money out of it then. He didn't. If you're saying good in relative, no. It was a one-time deal thing. Or at least allegedly, it was a one-time deal thing. Because the hubris, it was hubris. So if there's anything the author got was hubris. So in place of millions and millions of dollars, that could perhaps be shared and also have a working relationship with CDPR, it was more hubris. Got served with a lot of hubris. And not in the good sense either. Like what I mean by that is it wasn't like humility check. Like the person was particularly proud of their work. At least in my opinion. This is my interpretation. I should watch more interviews. It would be awesome if they do more interviews to make more clarity. But my impression is how the business transaction originally happened between the author and CDPR was one that would reflect on the author's confidence of their own work. So they easily took up an upfront payment for the licensing for their book. So to me, it wasn't an open discussion whether they believed in their own product. Now, there are authors out there, John Green being one of them, in my opinion. John Green has often took his payment up front for like movie adaptations of his book. And he largely have disclosed and openly said like, yeah, you know, it's not for profit. Like, I love the things that people make. Just pay me up front, and I'm still more like, you know, John Green was more than happy to be a consultant and continue to have a working relationship with the writing, but it wasn't about the money. Now, in terms of the Polish author, there were quotes. I don't speak Polish, so I wouldn't be able to interpret it myself. Allegedly, some people asked, like, what do you think about the arrangement now? And the person made mention of something like, oh, I didn't think much about it. It wasn't really big deal. I wasn't very confident in CDPR. I wasn't confident in those people. It might be a passion project, but probably not much is gonna come of it. So he asked for, allegedly, he asked for a lump sum, right? Just the rights, and the rest is history. So technically, it is up to the good faith of CDPR, Netflix, and all the other people to be cogent and respectful and also generous to elevate the author's work or the notoriety and or financial support, right? But it was a clean cut business deal, and that's kind of my impression of it, my current impression of it. I would love to watch a documentary on the makings of both the book and then like a bigger connected picture documentary of everything. But generally, I have these disjointed perceptions that the author did not believe in the business transaction. So they took the money up front. And then when they took the money up front, then they do not gain entitlement to all the financial risks and creative risks that CDPR had to assume, because the author was not confident and or willing to be part of that process. So for all of CDPR's success and for all of the controversial moves with Netflix, they assume all the financial responsibilities and creative risks. So one can say it's creatively bad and bad business, but they took financial risks and creative risks. And much like bad and good business, bad and good creativity, I appreciate those things because I do not assume any of the risks. If it's bad, then I say it's bad and I stop watching it. That kind of thing. And I continue to try to say that yes, things don't resonate with me. I don't enjoy certain things, etc. But I always appreciate the creative risks and the intellectuals that are responsible for the creativity. So when you have an intellectual that goes up front and say, yeah, I don't want to be part of your process, and then be bitter about it later because of its financial success, to me, that is definitely more of a hubris moment. That doesn't necessarily mean there's no future opportunities for creators to mend their relationships. The reason why I say this is because Game of Thrones is one of those examples. I wonder whose hubris and or humility is involved with the final season of Game of Thrones, right? You've got the book collection, you haven't gotten around to them. I definitely planned it. I have the entire book series I have the entire audio book series. So I have so many stacks of audiobook series, like the whole what is it? Horus Heresy and like 40K stuff, because 40K is gonna be mainstream sort of soon, right? I have the whole Lord of Rings series. Like I have those things on the back burner, and I've kind of like read excerpts of them here and there, but haven't gotten around to them. Yeah, the entire actually uh I have the entire Tolkien trilogy voiced by Andy Serkis. And then the Polish narrator, I forgot who was narrating for the Polish one. I mean, not the Polish one, but the English adaptation of the Polish Witcher books, right? So all of those, like 10, 40K novels. It's just so much. Anyways, I tend to like listen to them on road trips and whatnot. So I haven't had many road trips back recently. Right.
古来
Kodai. Let me know if you decide to start on them, because maybe that'll be great motivation to start on them as well. You know? Call it a sentimental push. Middle Earth. It's kind of funny, Middle Earth. Like you could call this Middle Earth. Tolkien. Speaking of Tolkien. It's not Middle Earth though.
地中
Ichu.
古い
Rui.
南東
Nanto. Do you know how to read Polish, Gecko? I don't. There was a time that I had a Polish friend, like an online friend. So, but they have since went their own ways. We were only connected tenuously by video games, online relationship, right? Only connected through interest and active interest. And when that active interest disappeared, usually it's not me. I know that sounds a little ethnocentric, but usually I'm the one that sticks around longer than the other person because of luxuries and privileges I have, I suppose. That person moved on since. Yo, let me know your list of things to check out when I have time. It's pretty long. Yeah, mine is too. Yeah. My personal things, my personal list. The list based on other people's interests is fairly short. Well, it's short in the sense of it's a short conceptual list. How to do them, like achieving them, it takes a very long time. So technically, like for example, WaniKani, for example, that's a 2.5 year investment. So the conceptual list is very short because WaniKani is one concept. But the amount of time it requires for me to reach that conceptual maturity is very long. And it usually, again, this is kind of a weird flex, I'm the one who has the longer project length than someone else. Until I meet someone who maybe is intellectually or maybe biologically, emotionally older than I am, I think my perception of time and investment usually I'm not the rate limiting step in these concepts. I usually exceed someone else's own interest most of the time. No, you don't know any Polish? You bought the English translation? Unless the original version is in French, I'll usually read the English version. Okay. I see. As a way to practicing your English. Imagine saying that while you're typing at a above high school level English casually in a live stream chat. I'm not sure if that's your target, but it's very refreshing. Largely, it enables me to use vocabulary and diction that I don't typically practice very often, right? I can throw around my break out the unhinged nature of my other idiosyncrasies here and there, embellish a little bit, use what would be unnecessary verbosity to sound a little bit more bombastic, fragrant. Yeah, fragrant. Use a little bit more fragrant vocabulary. I was looking for a different word. Practicing English. You gotta practice English. I gotta practice English. Well, you know very well that there's always more to learn. Indeed. If there isn't anything more to learn, I feel that my life would be incredibly intellectually hollow. I think someone shared some existential crises. Let's say evidence of existential crises when they were sharing some of their candid, intrusive thoughts, right? And I think one of my intrusive thoughts is when I've come to be demotivated by the idea that there is not more to learn or to experience, right? I think experience is learning inherent, and it's the very odd feeling when someone comes up to me and full confidently tell me, "You've already done it. I've already done this. I don't need to bother anymore. There's nothing more to learn." And that is probably one of the things that you're probably going to get my sympathy, but I can honestly tell you, I don't think I've lived one day in my life that I could empathize with that feeling. Where someone's like, "Oh, you can't learn anymore about this." So if there's any statement that requires more and more inculcation, probably that. There's always more to learn. And that's one of the absolute statements that I can stand behind, especially someone who's human. Honestly, it would do me good to read some more novels in French to keep improving your French too. I agree. I should read more in terms of English because my English has been quite rusty. But at this point in time, you make a somewhat conscious choice to give more focus to foreign languages. Yes, intent and active participation is incredibly consistently rewarding, right? Trying to do it all is idealism. Trying to do what you want to do at the moment with intent is active participation, right? As opposed to wishful thinking and hopeful thinking. Kind of like how both of us have collections of books that we haven't read yet or listened to. Not that I'm saying it's not a healthy part of human interaction, but that's still wishful thinking, right? The difference between actual actionable thought and choice making versus wishful and hopeful thinking, like that $400 tripod that's sitting in the back of the room that haven't been used yet. Wishful thinking, and does bring some sort of reminder of what wishful thinking and idealism looks like, right? It looks like a $400 tripod. You can use your imagination, I suppose, that kind of thing. Or a $5 whiteboard a dry eraser board that I haven't used yet, right? Yeah, conscious choices. Humans are weird in all the most wholesome ways. Okay, you read a quote somewhere that being a polyglot is speaking 5 languages and finding the specific word you're looking for in none of them. Who said that? I love it. Yep. What was my this is not a quote, but my antidote for being multilingual, right? Like, what I mean is, I'm not even sure if I consider myself multilingual. The more and more you get closer to polyglot status, the less and less certain you are multilingual. Hear me out. Largely because, from my perspective, the more you are invested in more than one thing, the less and less you think you know about any one thing. Right? Why do I think this is a human condition and why I can say that comfortably? The more and more you learn about the world and the bigger world you have, the more and more you think you know less. Because with every new knowledge comes knowledge of many more things you don't know. Exponentially more, even. So, with new discoveries come a multiplicative amount of new questions. And in my opinion, a truly intellectual person who's exploring language will come to the realization with every new language or depth of understanding of more languages, or the depth of any particular language, even within one language, comes more questions. So it brings, with greater knowledge and wisdom comes greater responsibility as well as unknowns. And that's kind of the fuel, right? That's kind of the endless cycle of being an intellectual. That thirst for knowledge and wisdom is unquenchable because it's a paradox. The more you think you know something, the less you think you know of the thing. You see what I mean? Hopefully it only fuels the thirst for more knowledge. Yeah, exactly. That's how it goes, right? I don't think here's a interesting. Now, I'm obviously focusing on a very specific feeling. It's not the reality. You do end up learning more. Like, the net increase of your knowledge goes up. It's with the perspective of the whole that I'm talking about. So in this comment that I make a lot is, I have never been the most uncertain in my life than the current present day. Right? So with every passing day in which I acquire new knowledge, having perspective on the breadth of the knowledge makes it seem like you know less and less of the whole picture. However, if you're focused on the present and looking at what you do know, that inherently goes up. So you are becoming more knowledgeable from a magnitude standpoint. Knowledge and wisdom goes up, right? However, with that comes the valley of despair. With new knowledge means there are new interactions, new emergent properties, and that comes with an appreciation of the unknown. So until, in my opinion, that is recognized, I think behaviors between behaviors are very obvious. They're very striated or quantized. The difference between someone who thinks that they've learned everything about a language versus someone who says, the more I learn, the more I feel like there's more that I don't know than I do know. Those things present themselves in very specific ways, especially behaviorism, right? Different types of behaviors, the way they talk, the way they solve problems, the way they make arguments and debates, self-evaluate. It's in my opinion, maybe it's not so clear for other people, or perhaps it is the reality. The people around them all behave similarly. For myself, personally, this might sound a little arrogant and presumptuous. I think I have had the privilege of being around enough different types of people that is incredibly obvious the difference between someone who is intellectually mature and someone who is not. And someone who is intellectually competent and mature in a field or in a skill set versus someone who is possibly competent but not intellectually mature. So the way they talk about things, the words they use, the way they express, has become far more obvious to me, largely because I had the privilege and life experience to be around these different types of people. Now, what is my normal day, my average day nowadays? I think in the last 6 or 7 years, it's like 4% of the time that I would encounter someone who is intellectually competent and mature when it comes to being a so-called, what is a word that would capture this moment but often misconceived? Smart person. A smart person, right? And here's the paradox. The biggest paradox here is I wouldn't ever use that word to characterize myself. Like that is it's incredibly flattering when someone says I am smart, I am articulate, like they compliment me, but rarely do I ever feel that's true. Largely because the insurmountable amount of ignorance that I think I have suppresses that feeling. Now, it is also the source of my timeless motivation to seek more enlightenment. So it sounds bad when you're dealing with imposter syndrome. At the same time, that imminent or very familiar feeling of imposter syndrome is the endless fuel source for a lifetime. And navigating that type of balance to like ebb and flow is quite important, in my opinion, for the mental health of the people who can empathize with what I've said now. If you are of that intellectual type, or like share some of the things that are familiar here, it is very important that you become somehow adept at navigating this feeling, that you're constantly thinking you're not good enough, because the more informed you become, the less and less you feel like you know, right? That type of thing is an endless, it can be a really great place if you can manage it. It can be a really self-defeating place if you can't manage it. And not people live happily ever after without having to ever engage in that. Actually, they can work simply, right? Have a very clarified life, black and whites. I mean, you see it here and there. It's very different. Those are different mindsets. One thing I have to say is that you can't go back. It's very difficult to go backwards. So when you become aware of something, human condition would dictate it becomes a part of you, right? If it's ever present, it's very difficult to pretend like it doesn't exist anymore. So I think with that said, I can conservatively say becoming a competent intellectual is a one-way streak. There's no going back. Innocence happens once in your lifetime. Ignorance and bliss of that ignorance is once in a lifetime. Unless There is extraneous circumstances, but I don't want to talk about them. They're very bittersweet and also very sad. Like, for example, degenerative mental disease like Alzheimer's or amnesia, head injuries, sure. But that is such a terrible silver lining if I had to make a compensation for the pros and cons, the whole package of being what I would consider a smart person. A smart person is rarely ever blissfully happy or success oriented in the way that one thinks from an incompetent lens. An incompetent person, who is not to say they're lesser of value, but a person who's incompetent and not familiar with being an intellectual rarely could appreciate the pros and cons of being an intellectual. And one of those misconceptions is that when someone is smart or intelligent or very enlightened, that they are always happy because they have the resources and success to constantly be successful. That is rarely the case. It is actually a constant battle regardless of what state of mind you're in. In fact, it might actually lean towards ignorance. Ignorance and innocence create an everlasting life of certainty and self-fulfillment. More knowledge and smarter and intellectually enlightened is a constant battle and increase against uncertainty. Anxiety, fulfillment, all these things come at greater risks, right? You're trying to find clarity. So when people say, oh yeah, I don't know why I'm so socially anxious, for example, right? Like the internet tells me all this information. I have all this information. Why am I so anxious and worried about all these things? Because everything you learn, you have to worry about them. So what happens when you remove that knowledge, and that knowledge is so inconveniently inaccessible? Well, you do it. You do the things. So you become an innocent until experience situation. Kids experience things. If they become informed of those things, then they have to consider all those things while they're doing that experience. So now it's in my opinion, it's a core human condition, is an exchange. With knowledge comes more responsibility. Responsibility sucks. They create uncertainty. They create baggage. So the more you learn, the more likely you'll get more anxious. There's going to be more responsibility, more weight, more stakes over time. And even superficial knowledge can have more weight than having no knowledge at all. So you can hear someone ramble about human health and you're like, oh, that doesn't involve me. But now you know about that stuff. So it's still adding to your baggage. And that's kind of one of those things I think is very, very misconceived and misunderstood. And when you talk about these things, the cognitive dissonance can reveal how incompetent or intellectually immature someone is. It's not a bad thing, because you might actually have a higher tendency of being happy with your choices. Choice happiness does not necessarily always, which is a misconception in my opinion, always come with more knowledge. More knowledge tends to complicate things. I would argue like 60-40 that it is more likely to complicate things and make things harder. So for example, having conversation with someone like, oh yeah, I really like this girl. I really want to talk. Can you, I should go to her friends and have them tell me all about this girl. So then when I go to talk to this girl, then I would be more confident and I would be more willing to be successful. That is not reality, in my opinion. Not only does that information complicate the way you talk to her, you are no longer actively invested in wanting to discover who this other person is that you love. You end up predicating everything on the balancing the knowledge you already have. And if you're already socially anxious and worried that this girl isn't going to like you back, adding more information, 60 to 40 again, it's not that clear cut, but 60% of the time, I think you'll become even more nervous, more unnatural, and also more passive in the interaction. So what am I summarizing here? The state of human communication online. People don't need to talk to other people if they think they already know all the information. And then when they have to and go to discover new information, they don't have the skills to do so, right? They're not comfortable with the idea of worrying about the unknown. And then knowledge actually creates more unknowns when you have to discover something. It can create a semblance of comfort when you're not engaging in discovery until you have to. So now you get all those questions like, oh no, like, oh, what happened? And I think that's kind of where I'm going at with this. Sometimes it helps to look back at where you came from. Yeah, once in a while, I also like to throw in some objectivity in the reasoning. Yeah, you gotta spice it up, change it up. Sometimes this, sometimes that. Like, for example, you probably know Japanese better than 90% of the people in the world, no matter how inadequate I may somewhat feel about it. Indeed, actually. Indeed. Especially the rest of the world, right? It's not about being better than others, but about yourself, yes. I think the normalizing factor, right? You might... I've been spinning a narrative that's one-sided, so someone could come up to me and say, Maku, well, why then are you seeking new knowledge? Why do you make it sound like it's such a bad thing? Like, no, it's not. You can juggle this. You can manage this. One of the things that are constant is yourself. Yourself has certain certainties and qualities. So what comes with great knowledge also comes with resilience and practice of the self. So what does someone who knows a lot of things, why do they still kind of sound confident or be able to leverage their knowledge at the overwhelming increase in appreciating the unknown? Self-discovery, right? Self-understanding. There are consistent constants in our lives that the self can promote. So you yourself would feel like you're not smart, but that doesn't stop you from understanding yourself as well as you can in order to express it to other people. But that self-discovery is the rock bed of how you can tackle constantly being intellectually curious while also being consistent with one's own perspective. It's a self. And oftentimes I ask if the person is happy, self-aware before they constantly engage in more knowledge seeking and sources of anxiety, right? When someone says, I have problems talking to people, well, how well do you know yourself? No, I actually disagree that this is like an optional step. I think this is very much, there are properties that you can skip over, like unrefined and skip over, but generally speaking, a level of self-awareness is often required prior to engaging in a lifetime in the pursuit of knowledge, largely because it helps that stay consistent, right? And what is knowledge? The pursuit of knowledge? Relationships is a pursuit of knowledge. You're trying to learn another person who may be incredibly unpredictable, like in a good or bad way, depending on how self-aware that person is, right? So that's kind of where we start building people. How is this important to me? It helps me identify where, or presumably make some accurate, maybe consistent presumptions about where intellectually someone is. Because online, the main activity we're exchanging is probably exchanging knowledge. We can't do like feelings or touch or literal, things, right? So one of the main perceptions of being adequate online is how well the different types of people share information, right? So I'm very much hyper focused on this type of thing. It has happened to you in the past to wish that I was less smart, so to speak, than I had a simpler, less intellectual mind. I have this intrusive thought all the time. In fact, that type of thing can become very bad. Very bad. And what I mean by very bad, let me give you a dark example. And this is, in my opinion, I'm going to say very bad for this situation because this is an extreme situation. So take it with a grain of salt. When someone says, I don't matter in this world because I'm one of how many? 4 billion? Like, that is what happens, right? So if you're not self-aware enough to create your own value, your own self-existence, right? Juggle that there are a lot of people around you, and then you yourself is also important. There are people in your sphere that love you. Without that, being less smart can be the remedy, right? So those are intrusive thoughts that I thought, like, what if I didn't know that a Chinese person would come up to me and say I'm fake Chinese? Now, I could just pretend to be ignorant, or what would life be like if I was just completely ignorant of that? Right? That's kind of one of those things that, and now I think about it every day, right? I think about these things every day. So, are they bad or good is something worth negotiating with yourself. I believe it can be very fulfilling too, but the path to happiness does seem more complex in your opinion. Indeed. Obviously. And I'm saying like a 60-40 exchange, right? Where all of these things are the consequences. It's like arguing within the box, like that I'm arguing in, where like a lot of the comments that I'm making are already evident in the way I'm presenting the idea. It's not that simple, and yet I'm trying to make it simpler in order to convey an idea. But generally speaking, if you're an intellectual and you're talking to another intellectual, at the end of the day, there's not enough time in a lifetime to come up with a concise, reductive reasoning for anything to an extent that would be satisfactory to either party. I think there's a formal agreement in order to benefit either of us for the pragmatic use of inculcating or exchanging an idea or point. We have to reduce the complexity to a point that is negotiable to both parties, right? So yes, it is certainly not that simple. However, to me, if you're constantly saying it's not that simple, it depends, that's too complicated to understand, then you're not actually doing the discussion. So no information is actually being exchanged here. And I run face first against that notion. I think nowadays, due to the hyperinflation of knowledge, younger, inexperienced people are not, in my opinion, intellectually mature enough yet, intellectually experienced enough to find some manageable way to juggle coming up with an idea, suggesting an idea, executing and leading an idea, knowing that you're going to constantly say it depends. Because you won't be able to form an opinion anymore, right? And that is what it's like, in my opinion, to be an intellectually mature person, for better or for worse. I think personally, being an intellectually mature person is a constant uphill battle against dissatisfactory behavior. Being increasingly needing to be agreeable is a bane and an exchange for knowledge and wisdom. If you're constantly sounding more and more like a politician, for example, reductive stereotype, if you're constantly sounding more and more like a politician, then you are consistently trying to manage more and more information and knowledge that you have. The more privileged knowledge you have, the more, privileged knowledge, right? Knowledge that only you have, that other people have, that comes with more responsibility. And that responsibility leads to far more eccentricity, like ways and a pound ways to navigate that knowledge without being overwhelmed. I believe, speaking of not enough time, I think I must leave for now. Yeah. It is that time again. You need some sleep, but thanks for the talk again, Gecko, and the inspiration for another great digression. We need to exchange figurative drinks nowadays, you know. It's fun. Yes, it was fun. Thank you. Luckily, there's always next time to keep discussing on this fascinating topic or any other. Yeah, have a great night. Oyasumi nasai, Gecko. Oyasumi nasai. All right, let's go back. Refocus. At 8:30. Okay. Body strength, physical strength, right? Body. Dai. And then Dairoku. Right? Dairoku. Refocus. Dairoku sounds right. No. Wait. Yes. No. Body? No, Tairoku. Tairoku.
体力
Tairoku.
草
Sa. Oh, PM is not that. We can't use evening. I mean, we can only use afternoon. It's more of a synonym issue.
ず
Um,
来年
Einen.
Kuki
Uki.
午後
Bongo. I have to go to the bathroom. Sorry. I'll be right back. Can't hold it in anymore. Ooh, we not hold that in. That's for sure. Okay. Keep going here. What we have? The middle age. What is middle age? Apparently not middle age, right? Middle age? Middle of life? Oh. Second hand, right? Used? Slightly old? Used? Second hand.
不安
One. I don't think there's any change to the
中古
too cold.
有名
Humid. Or country? Shikoku. Oh. Right. Toho. No. Tohoku.
東北
Tohoku.
Shikoku
Shikoku.
海外
Aigai. No. Uh, so rice patty with a stick through it. What did I use you for? Early. Or is it early? No. This is humble, right? Humble. Ato de.
後で
九州
Kyushu.
生ビール
Namabiru. Itsu. Oh, wait. Yeah, it's Kitsu.
Oto
Oh. Guess we're still using room. Whoops. Oh.
質
Jitsu. Say humbly is mole.
Omou
Omo. Big body. Shika.
地下
Shika. Tai Tai? Wait. Yes.
だいたい
Tai Tai.
声
Eh. All is still all, right? All in airy. This one's different. This is the exception. This is one of the exceptions. Okay. How does it work? Something better, right? Something better. Spete? No. Obete? Abete? Bete? Ubete? Hmm. Every all. Spete is pretty close. Spete. Ubete. Ubete. Sube. What is sube for? Oh, souvenir. Right. Subete.
すべて
Subete. Subete.
安い
Yasui. Chika. Yasui.
ある、
ある、
谷、
谷、
外国人、
外国人、
心、
心、
今夜、
今夜、
明るい、
ある、
歩く、
歩く、
麦、
麦、oops,
年内、
年来、yes. お、行う、行う、
行う、
行う、
地図、
地図、全力、全力、ね、
全力、
全力、
弟、
弟、
東京、
東京、um,
中国、
中国、
文化、
文化、
足す、
す、
夜、
夜、all strength. Okay. Excuse me. Boiled fortune. The heck is boiled fortune? Oh, it comes to a point, right? Boils down to a point. Um, when you towards something, MAKU.
向く 平安
and
中東、
中東、
石ころ
石ころ、
金星
金星、
国王
国王、
兄弟
兄弟、oh, this is Tochi, right?
土地
Tochi,
四角、
四角、
一歩、
一歩、
本州
本社、
本社、
lively is spray, Hoang. Oh,
東方
oh, All right, let's get our last 8. Okay.
文学、
文学。
今月、
今月。
映る、
映る。
丸ごと、
丸ごと。
近い、
近い。
生まれる、
生まれる。We got one lesson? The heck? Oh. Toru to take, yeah. To take something. Because it's transitive. Toru.
取る、
We don't need anything for this.
取る、
Oh, and they accept to take. To take something. But fine. Oh, there you have it. Let's do our review. 2.5 hours. Give or take an hour for some light discussion. We got our first enlightened kanji. What was our first enlightened kanji? No idea. Neat. Neato. Neato burrito. Alright. Neck. Yakuza. Death. Jet. Knife. Fortune. City. Hoang. Mama. Angel. Hung. Rain. Eat. Sheep. Ladle. Lion. Boil. Blood. House. Just the reads. Right. Reads. Choku. Choku and Chiki. Choku Chiki. Shu. Shi. Omo. Ya. Ryo. Zen. Me. Go. Ko. Ka. Ya. Kyo. Ho. O. Shi. Cho. Po. Kai. An. Ketsu. Ketsu. O. De. Ka. Katsu. Katsu. Okay. Katsu. ten, kyoku, boku, mai, shi, you, yo, chi, nan, zen, ten, itsu, bibi, right, bibi, bibi, shoku, yoku, shi, ho, yet. Oh, there, Lavender. All right. So that's the end of our WaniKani. No errors today, right? No errors today. Looks like it's diminished, right? Tomorrow is an interesting schedule. Might not even get to 7 p.m. tomorrow, partially because we digressed today. Yeah, no errors today. That's a wrap for our WaniKani and our Japanese session today. If you're gonna watch this later, arigatou gozaimasu, right? What did we talk about today? Knowledge, right? Knowledge. We talked about look back, anime movies, some legacy, some anime directors, prominent directors. Then we got into a longer discussion about knowledge, mental states that come with knowledge, intellectual maturity, the pros and cons, I suppose, the larger perspective on ignorance, right? Can be blissful. There's clarity. Knowledge comes with more responsibilities, complications, that type of thing. Learn to negotiate that. Language learning is part of it. I like that Gecko. What spawned most of that conversation was when Gecko talked about the funny duality, or like the paradox of becoming a polyglot and not having a clear, precise way of saying the particular word in any of the following languages, right? That kind of thing speaks volumes from someone who is able to execute multiple languages. All right, so for those who are only interested in that, matane, right? 皆さん、matane, じゃあね. I'm gonna go straight into Hanzo Hero actually, since I already taken the bathroom break. All right, we're gonna switch gears now. Thank you.